You're visiting the Mom Next Door and our stories of faith. I'm glad you dropped by for a visit. Please stay a while and hear what the Lord has done in the lives of moms just like you and me. Hey moms, I'm so glad you're here. I'm Pam Fields, host of the Mom Next Door Stories of Faith. And I wonder if you'd mind if we just jump right in today and go deep right off the bat. I think my guest Amy has a lot to say to encourage your heart right where you are today. Amy, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your family and what does your life look like on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. Well, my name is Amy Debrucque, and I'm an author, coach, podcaster, and host of the Life on Purpose podcast. And so it's always nice to connect with fellow podcasters because I really think it gives a fresh perspective and what everybody's ministry is and how it can really speak to everybody else. But my life right now is different, much different than it was years ago with having 4 kids. 3 right now are out of the house. They're actually living on the West Coast, and we are currently on the East Coast. And so my youngest is stuck home with my husband and I until she graduates next year. But they will be heading back. But right now, that's the family dynamic. My oldest son is on a deployment. He's in the U.S. Navy. And then the other 2 are in grad and undergrad school. And then the youngest is in high school. So life looks different. It's weird not having as many seats filled at the dinner table at night for sure. It's been an adjustment for all of us, but I'm trying to, just really enjoy every stage and age and not stay in the past. I think that's the hardest thing when your kids get older is it's different moments, but I'm trying to just enjoy the moment that we're in.
I hear that. And, we've moved from Oregon to Tennessee and we've still got 2 kids in Oregon. And sometimes people say, do you miss it? Are you glad you made the move? And I go, okay, well, we really love it here. And then when I think, oh, sometimes I really miss Oregon and I miss my house, I think what I miss is that time when everybody was home. Everybody was sitting around the table or running around the table or bringing their friends over. And I miss those times. Like that's huge. And, but yet we can't stay there. There is no way that with kids in their 20s that I would want everybody still living at home, right? Like this is, they're living out, they're calling what God has called them to do. And that's really my greater heart cry is that they follow the Lord and do what he's called them to do.
Definitely. I totally agree.
So tell me a little bit about your faith story and where did that begin and how did that change over the years?
We grew up in a house of faith. When I was younger, we went to the Catholic Church, and so that was, something that was more of I felt like we did on Sunday. We didn't really get into reading our Bible as much as we were more focused, I think, on the traditions. That's not to say that that's how every house or every Catholic runs that. That's just the way it was for us. But we were always believers. It was never something that I ever thought about not being, or it wasn't anything like that. However, everybody kind of changed. So I'm the youngest of 5, and as my siblings got older, everybody married a non-Catholic. And so they were going to different churches. They were going to more either like a evangelical or not some type of non-denominational or just a different that was not a Catholic church. And that's just because that's what their spouses were. And so I was really the last one, even my parents, which is unheard of, because typically that generation, I mean, you don't leave your church and you certainly don't leave the Catholic Church, but they had left before I did. And so it wasn't until my youngest son was, well, I think I even had him baptized in the Catholic Church. And then after that, I thought, we needed to make a move. And it's interesting, Pam, because I never probably really would have thought about making the move. And even when we did, I felt like it was more for my kids. I thought my husband and I were pretty well set, which is just makes me laugh now. But we had a babysitter, which at the time we didn't really have many babysitters. We normally just didn't go out that much. Our kids were little, or my parents would watch them or something. But this particular time, we had a girl that we knew, sweet, wonderful girl, and she came to the house, and it was just the two kids, the three kids at the time, but my son was a small, like maybe 6 months old, 7 months old, the youngest at the time. And she could not stop talking about her youth group and how, the night before they had gone skiing and just all the stuff. And so the whole time my husband and I were at dinner for our date night, we could not stop talking about this girl. And like, gosh, like what kid that age is excited about going to church? Like it just blew our minds.
Mm.
And I couldn't shake it. We just could not, I couldn't stop thinking about it. And so fast forward, and again, we were the last ones still going to the Catholic church I grew up in. And I thought, you know what? We both were like, let's change that for our kids. And so at whatever point, we're going to switch. And so we did. And we ended up going to the church that this girl had gone to. And we went there for many years. And it's always interesting too, Pam. Like we were, like I said, we were going for the kids. And then, week 4, we're like, wow, we really know nothing here. And so that was a kind of a eye-opening situation right there, was like how little we actually knew and how little growth, or if any growth, we even had in our faith and what that actually looked like. And so what started off as we thought for someone else, surely was really, we needed it just as much, if not more, especially when you're raising children. And so we went there for years, and it was just one of those things. But even when we were going and learning, I still hadn't matured enough in my faith. I was still that person. It was really until I had a cancer diagnosis at age 40, which is about 12 years ago, that I realized at that time that I had still really been riding to some extent on my parents' faith, on the coattails of their faith. And I really hadn't invested in doing the work of what that would look like for myself, really getting in the word. I was showing up. I was faithful to it. I knew scripture. I believed it. I did all of that, but I wasn't carving out the time and attention that it deserved. And because of that, years before that cancer diagnosis, I had had 2 major tragedies. My oldest son passed away, and my firstborn son passed away within 16 days of each other. And it created a lot of anxiety and fear in my life. And I didn't realize until after that diagnosis and after that realization that, wow, I have not put the work in. That maybe if I had, and this is part of my ministry, is really trying to encourage women to take a pause and ask yourselves those questions, because I think it helps when situations come up. I mean, grief is still something very unique to navigate. There's no
Mhm.
specific answer, one and done. But I do think it's helpful if you are the strongest you can be in your foundation of faith, I think is always helpful. And for me, the cancer diagnosis was that pivotal moment where I was going to keep going my own way and kind of just scratching the surface, or I was really going to trust God and dive in deep. And so
Mm.
that was the game changer for me moving forward, and how I would translate that to my children in my life and what that looked like. So that was really how my faith journey played out.
Mm. I love that that was your babysitter who really
Hmm.
witnessed to you. I think we drop these seeds of faith no matter where we go. That is just so cool that that was through her. And I bet, I wonder, I guess she must have known, since you started going to church there later,
Yeah.
that she had an influence on your life in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Total impact. And it is amazing. And I think the one reason I like sharing that story is, number one, because she was so young.
Yeah.
And number two is because you just never know who, but you have to be willing to listen. And I think if we were rushing out the door and not even listening to what she had to say, and, which is a common thing, right? We all live in a world of busyness at times, and we're so distracted. But if we could take a minute sometimes and just pay attention and be present with the person in front of us, which
Mhm.
sometimes is a discipline, right? Sometimes it's just not easy to do depending on what's going on. that's when you hear God speak. And that's how it worked for us. It was like if we had just kind of bypassed that, it would have been easy to overlook, but it was just, yeah. And I love that she was young because you don't
Mhm.
know where the testimony is going to come from. That's up to God. We just have to be willing to hear it and do something with it.
Yeah, and he was calling you, he was drawing you, and it
Hmm.
just took her testimony and her sharing her life with you. And sometimes we're
Yeah,
afraid to share our lives with people, right? We're just, I'm
right.
here to do a job, I'm here to just put in my time, do my minimum, but she was also willing to share her life with you,
Yeah.
and there was the result. So I think that is absolutely beautiful. So with the cancer diagnosis, that comes with just a whole barrage of emotions. Just thinking through your own, how old? Let's see, you said 10 years ago. So your children were still at home. They were still,
Hmm.
or most of them were still at home, right? So you're processing what this means for you, what this means for them. And there's a lot of fear that enters in there. And so, how did you navigate that?
Yeah, that was hard. I mean, when you're faced with your own mortality and you have children, your number one fear is I don't want to leave them without a mother. And so I think it was easily a place you can get stuck in for sure.
Yeah.
But for me, because I had made that decision to not let the fear of not knowing, continue to run me. I mean, the reality was, Pam, is I had been prepping for that for the last 15 years because I had been so fearful because of those two other deaths of what was going to happen next, whether it was going to be my health or somebody else's health and I was so trying to control all of the outcomes. And so I think because I had just let that go, it was easier to navigate, which I know sounds strange.
Mm,
It was still a scary time, but I was really, if anything, hyper focused on being present.
mm,
And so I was taking it, I remember at times praying in between like having scans and saying, listen, if after I would get a good scan, I would say, okay, I can live in a 3 month increment, to the next one. And I'm just going to, live fully for the next 3 months without assuming or expecting anything other than until the next, whatever report I get next time. And so I think that helped me. I think it was a journey that I needed to start that practice of baby steps of
mm.
learning how to trust him in small increments at a time until that really started building into the long term. And it still wasn't like, oh, I'm going to expect everything's going to be great for the rest of my life. It wasn't that, but it was just replacing the fear, the repetition of fear and counting on that and replacing it with counting on trusting him in whatever that would look like. And I would be okay with that.
Mm. Well, I think it does make sense in that here you came in almost like an anxiety of this is just these deaths have been in my family, and I think we kind of fear that unknown, right? So what
Sure.
what's next? What's next? And then when you get a diagnosis, you don't have to wonder what's next. You know what's in front of you right now. And
Right.
so you come to a realization of it in a very different way. Whereas before it was just this unknown possibility looming. And
Hmm.
now it's time to focus and go, okay, here's what's actually happening. And now I deal a lot better in the tangible. And I
Hmm.
think that maybe in that situation, it moved it from a just this questionable what will happen in my future and where is that anxiety, and then put it into a very concrete this is happening now. I can deal with that. All right, I know
Right.
what I need to do. I need to mobilize and breathe into my kids and focus for the next 3 months or however
Yeah.
long to what needs to get done now in preparation for what's next.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think because I was in that what if for so long, and then it's almost like, and I always say, I don't think God gave me cancer, but he allows things in your life. I think that you need to get something out of. And for me, it was the trusting piece and really kind of leaning into him and not having to focus on the what if. Because at that point it's like, okay, well, it's here. Here's the what if. And
Hmm.
so what are you going to do with it? It was a matter of, are you going to keep going your own way of living in fear, or are you going to just trust me during the process? And so it was definitely something that I needed to walk through for sure.
It seems like in so many of our stories, community is a huge part of this. And what I'm kind of curious about, it sounds like you were almost in a transition between communities, if I was understanding that correctly, because you were coming out, you were still in the Catholic Church, or you were changing
No,
from? No.
I had already come out. We had already been at this other church when I had gotten the diagnosis. But I do think, but it's interesting that you even said that, because outside of us being established in another church, which was wonderful, and we did have a strong community, and we have since switched, but we have a strong community today, is that in my everyday of just women warrior community, I was somebody when I was going through that, I didn't share any of that. And so it was a very private struggle with severe anxiety that I took on myself. And I say this often, it was something that I felt, especially as a Christian woman, that I should be able to figure out. I didn't, it was embarrassing to me that I
Mm,
couldn't figure it out, that I was still struggling with the anxiety. I didn't want it. I was somebody who was always in control. And so the fact that I couldn't master it was extremely frustrating to me,
mm,
and not anything that I wanted to share. I've always been somebody who was the listener or helping hand to somebody else, but I didn't want that for myself. I wanted to always be in the other role. And I think that there was a huge pride factor involved in that. And that was something else that I think God really needed me to address, is that I wasn't better than anybody else. And it sounds very, blunt, but that was the bottom line. I mean, it doesn't really matter what it is if you think that you're too good to go through the same thing as somebody else. It was just something that I had to face and really address in my life. And then just understand that, there was a difference between being vulnerable and transparent, and to really move past this and to really have fellowship in true community and true prayer warriors, that I really needed to show some vulnerability in what I was going through.
mm. Okay, I think we could dwell there for a few minutes because I
Mhm.
think you speak to the heart of a lot of moms. And we're often doers by nature of being a
Right.
mom, right? We have so many of the tangible things that we're managing for ourselves and for other people. It seems that we kind of process by doing and doing for others. Recognizing our own vulnerability, recognizing our own need is a huge thing. And I know I struggle with that too. I'm like, I want to help you. What can I do to help you? But by not recognizing my own need for help and my
Sure.
own need for prayer, and I'm essentially, like you said, pride. I'm essentially saying I can do this for myself, but you, darling, need some help. So let me help you. But I also know there's another factor in that. And often that is not feeling value of yourself, right? Like I put another person's value high above my own, and I don't recognize my own value as a
Mhm.
daughter of the king, right? I don't recognize that I do have needs because I'm just so busy taking care of everybody else's. And so I think that's another component that we can struggle with.
Oh, yeah. I think if we're always pouring out but never filling up, it's hard to do anything really effectively. You know what I mean? And I do think that we can run out of, I think, as you're right, as nurturers and mothers, we that's the normal routine, right? Is taking care of everybody else. But there's something to be said for having some self-care, number one, not feeling guilty about it. And self-care, immediately people get like, oh, I don't have time to go to the spa or get my nails done or whatever. But self-care could simply be, I need 20 minutes, maybe it's 10 minutes if you're babies or they're very little children, to just sit and get in God's word, or to sit and meditate, or to sit in prayer, or to have a cup of tea, to just regroup, to journal, whatever it is, walk outside, take a walk, get in nature for 10 minutes, whatever it looks like, we feel guilty and we don't do it. And I think that the result of that is we start feeling anxious, we start feeling fearful because we have not refueled and refreshed our own souls. And I think
Mm,
that's where the sticking point can easily get to be.
mm. We need that time to renew our minds.
Hmm.
Otherwise, our thoughts take over, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm really curious then, what did your community look like in change? Did you, where before you were more of a lead and lean on me kind of person, did you start to lean in on them and recognize that? And what did that look like?
Well, I've always kept my circle small.
Hmm.
So it wasn't hugely dramatic in the sense
Yeah.
of there was, a bigger audience involved. I think I noticed that more in the church, because that wasn't something I would have necessarily done in the Catholic Church. I know people would have prayed for me, but it was different in the church we had taken up, and it just felt different. It felt like a different connection,
Yeah.
and I mean, I'm grateful for that. But it was different. It still feels very awkward and uncomfortable for me to be in the spotlight. I always say I'm fine with being a background girl. I don't necessarily thrive in the spotlight. And even podcasting and writing and all of that, I feel is an obedience. I love sharing it. And at the same time, I hate sharing it because some of that stuff, and I don't share, and I'm not encouraging people to share every thought and every moment. I think there is something to be said for having a private life and respecting certain boundaries and stuff like
Right.
that for
Right.
integrity. But I do think that it is important, and I had to get over myself and my own pride issues and ego to be able to tell somebody, yes, I did struggle with anxiety, and it's something that I have to really pay attention to and be okay with it, and not fear what I think might somebody perceive me as needs to be irrelevant as long as I'm speaking to that one woman that God wants to hear the message. That's
Mm.
got to trump everything else.
Okay, so fast forward a little bit. You are years later, right? And you have overcome. So I want to jump to this book that you have written with your daughter, because I think that has some roots in what's happened in your life previously. And boy, parenting adult children is a totally different story, right? And so I think, how fun is it that you got to write a book with her? So
Yeah.
tell me about maybe the root of that and how that developed.
So really the root of that book journey was my daughter was a sophomore in college and was running into similar issues for that age group. And we just felt, she just kind of felt like she was in a space where she didn't really fit in. And even though it was a Christian college, it was just all stuff that it doesn't really matter what college you're at that you're going to be dealing with. And the more discussions she and I had, I realized, adult women feel the same way. You
Yeah.
either feel like you're too Christian or you're not Christian enough, especially in this, ministry. And what if we created something that could speak into both
Hmm.
and really either reignite, the Christian who's maybe just fallen by the wayside or just been a little distracted in the world and needs to kind of just get get on it again,
Mm,
and the girl who doesn't really have any faith at all and doesn't really know what that looks like, but feels intimidated to just immediately join a Bible study or feels like she's,
mm,
not doesn't know enough to get involved or pick up a devotional or whatever the case is. I think a lot of times people just feel like they're not qualified to join certain groups and be a part of certain situations, especially if they don't have that biblical knowledge. So we
yeah.
created this encouragement journal, Embolden, to meet women where they were, but not necessarily leave them there. So it was something where they could pick it up and it would they would have to make space for an intentional pause to answer some questions and just do some self reflection. but then also have some scripture to set them up. So if you were that new Christian and you had nowhere to begin or start, we would try to lead you along the path and how that would look. And then, like I said, and then for the seasoned Christian, kind of just get you back on track, because we all have moments where we're on it and we're off it, depending on what season that we're in. And so that was the goal of Embolden, and really just trying to encourage women to take that next brave step, whatever that looked like. Because, my oldest daughter and I were both a little more wired in a combination of extrovert, introvert. And so, that's the other thing, a brave step for somebody who's extroverted is going to look entirely different from a girl who's introverted. And her brave
Yeah.
step might be just buying the book. It might just be showing up for a class at the Y just to get some self-care in. And so we really wanted to speak into both of those women and not feel like it has to be one way or the other.
Mm. Yeah, the enemy seems to he really tries to mess us up in so many ways. And it usually involves our mind and speaking these falsehoods to us, like, you don't know enough, like, why even try?
Mhm.
If
Sure.
you can't be at a Bible study doing an in-depth theological, debate, then you just don't belong in the arena at all. And that's not true. That's not true.
Right.
No matter if you're youth or an adult, no matter where you came, like how many years you've been walking the faith journey, um, there's always room for growth. There's always a place we can pick up and just go a little deeper. We need to remember that and encourage each other in that too.
Right.
There's a battle for our mind. And I
Yeah.
love that just this journal. I like the journaling devotionals where I just tend to learn better if I can take a moment to write things down. It just,
Hmm.
all those learning processes come through and it just sticks in a little deeper.
Yeah. And I think it helps create that intentional pause, because we do get busy and it's easy to just bypass it. But if you have something that has an added step of engagement where you actually have to, oh, okay, well, I'm not just going to say this first. They're asking me, like to write something down or whatever. It's like, okay, then there's already that intention behind it where you have to take a pause, be still, and actually listen. Okay, what is this? What is God actually speaking to me? So yeah, that was why we created that.
Now, is the book written with one of your girls that's in on the West Coast now?
Hmm.
Yeah.
So my oldest daughter, so my two girls are the bookends. They're the oldest and youngest, and it was with
Okay.
my oldest, and she's in grad school now, but it was fun. It was nice to create, because again, it was almost similar to the experience with the babysitter that came over, and when we moved churches, thinking that, oh, well, this is going to be for our kids, and even when I initially decided to write this with her, I was thinking, oh, this would be wonderful to speak into young women. And then after the fact, it was like, this speaks into all women. And we broke it up into 4 weeks and topics that we felt like never age out. And so we talk about things like fearless
Mm.
and judgment and growth and those kinds of things, because I feel like those things don't go away. And even kindness, especially, when we're in a world right now where some people are just unkind, and you can come across unkind Christians. It doesn't matter, just if you have
Hmm.
that label attached to it, and
Hmm.
just ways to identify if maybe you've fallen into that trap, and how it doesn't have to be that way. So yeah, we try to really set every woman up that reads the book with success, and also as a resource that maybe you go through it now and you're in a good run, and then maybe a year and a half, 2 years from now, you need to get back on the horse, and it's something that you can pick up and reuse over and over again.
Well, sometimes it's really hard to start conversations with our young people too. And they
Mhm.
always want to talk starting at what, 10:30 p.m. Like, "Hey, do you have a minute? Let's talk." But I could see even the chapters of this being really good conversation prompts with our teenagers, young adults, college age kids, because as much as we invest in their day-to-day lives the entire time they're in our home, I feel like we still long to connect with them when they're out of our home. I'm actually thinking that I could even take a journal like this and maybe start some even texting conversations with some of my
Mhm.
older children and just be like, hey, what do you think about this? Or have
Right.
you ever noticed this? And that would be a real open door to keeping in relationship, because I think you're right. The struggles that we have now are the same struggles that they're having or have had. Some places we might have overcome. And, it's interesting, even my 16, 18-year-old, they have different challenges, but sometimes they've overcome in areas that I'm still struggling with.
Sure.
Doesn't that blow your mind? Like, I'm thinking they have this lesson down, and that one I just need their help with, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that I love that because I do think that it bridges the gap too. And I think it does open doors with communication and conversation and really kind of letting them know too that these topics don't age out and they are relatable and that you can relate to them, whoever is, whoever's texting or speaking into them. But this is something that we all feel. Now, we may have a different response, and that's the beauty of it. So like, one of the pages, it's like circle the word that describes you today, and it gives you a bunch of different words. Well, four people may have four different words that's describing them today. And
Mhm.
and so that's a great way to begin that conversation of, okay, well, why do you think that is? And where maybe is that coming from? And just different things. And so I do think it is really important to remember that. And I love that you are, talking about it in a way to really keep those lines of communication open. And I think it's also nice for the younger generation to think that we don't have it all figured out. I think that also makes it more appealing to them to feel like they can come to us and ask. I don't tell my kids every mistake I've ever made in my life, but I do think that there's something to be said for sharing certain things for certain reasons and letting them know that they're not alone. These are common things that can come up. And I think
Mhm.
every parent's goal is, let's see if we can have, this generation not maybe fall or falter as many times as I did. And so maybe if there's a level of honesty and relatability from certain issues that they're dealing with that I've dealt with in the past, that's going to maybe bridge the gap there. And so that's kind of what I think happened even with my daughter and I creating this together.
We're really close in age, you and I. But neither of us are all gray yet, right? And I
Well,
think
I color mine, Tam.
well, I have a little highlights in mine too, I have to say. But anyway, I think to myself, I've told people, I just want to be that little gray-haired woman in the store who walks up to people and encourages them and has this big knowledge base of wisdom and can speak life. But the truth is, it does not happen automatically. It takes some work, and it takes that muscle where we're constantly going back to the word and being refined. And I think if we were to have an expectation that we could sit where we are now without that work,
Mm-hmm.
we won't ever become that woman of wisdom that we would like to be. When we see that woman at our church who is such an inspiration and encouragement to us at this point in our life, we have to recognize that there were challenges that they worked through to get there.
Right. No, I think you're right. I mean, it does. At the end of the day, it comes down to having to put the work in and what that looks like and how much time we're investing in that.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you've joined me today and that we've gotten a chance to just talk about so many pieces of motherhood and moving in relationship with our kids and growing for ourselves. I want to make sure everybody knows where to find you. You've got this book that it's called Embolden, and I love the cover. It's a beautiful cover.
Thank you. Thank
So,
you.
and I saw that you have it in a full size and like a purse size too. That's kind of fun.
We did that just so, like the the bigger ones are great, and Bible studies, and a lot of women use them for that kind of in that space. But we also wanted to be able to have it a little smaller so you could kind of just throw it in your purse if you wanted to do it while you're sitting in your son, the parking lot for your son or daughter's practice or whatever the case is, or throwing it in your purse on the plane, or just a little bit more travel friendly.
And the overall arch of what you're doing here, I like, is that Embolden is speaking that courage into people. And you also do coaching, which is that bringing in that confidence and courage mindset.
The coaching actually is something that was really birthed from Embolden, and the feedback we had gotten in that, and just a lot of questions that I was getting. And I thought, it might be smart to just get a life coaching, get some certifications, and really be able to speak into women on more practical levels of ways to kind of help them address the root of their fears, and move ahead to start that process of what it looks like to be brave and how to get to that point. And so, yeah, I love that. I have, now that it's a new year, I have slots open and times available to meet with women. And it's always a blessing to be able to coach women in confidence and just, again, remind them that fear is normal, but courage gets the final say. So it's really a gift to be able to do that.
I love that you're going back and reaching to the roots of that. Maybe it's something you talk about on your own podcast, and tell me the name of that.
That podcast is Life on Purpose with Amy Debrucque. And that's what I do. Typically, I'll do a few episodes in the month of some practical tips on questions that people have submitted that they want to address. And then I have a guest that comes on and really kind of just gleans with their story and information and resources to really speak into, whatever the topic is that really women need to hear. And sometimes it's interesting. You get more, or you get something new each time when you hear from somebody different. And so I love having guests on. I think it really speaks into women and men who listen to just get a fresh perspective.
Oh, I just love testimony because I know that when
Yeah.
we hear of what the Lord has done, it does give us strength for our days as well. Now, all of these things I'm going to put in the show notes. And the big one where I think they can get connected to all these things now, Amazon for the book, of course, but we're going to link to your website itself. And you want to tell me the name of that?
Sure. The website is amydebrucque.com. And if the last name scares you and you think you're not going to misspell it, you can always type in surrenderyourfear.com. It links to the same website. Everything is in there. Just make sure you don't put an S in. It's just fear, not fears. Surrenderyourfear.com. You can access the coaching page there. You can access my blogs, the podcast. A few other women and I are going to be hosting a retreat in September. So you can stay tuned and probably check the website for more information and on how that's coming along. And so, yeah, you can connect with me there, and on social, it's the same handle at Amy Debrucque. I would love it. I just want to thank you for having me on. It was really special. I love the conversation, and I love the work that you're doing and speaking into the lives of moms and women. And so it really makes a difference.
Thank you. Yeah. So why don't you just pray and close us out?
Okay, that sounds great. Lord, thank you so much for this time with Pam. It's been a wonderful conversation. I pray that there are listeners, even if it's just one, that a topic that we touched on today is resonating with them and giving them some courage and confidence to know that, number one, that they're not alone. Also, that you are walking alongside us with everything that we are dealing with, and the importance of giving it up to you. And what that looks like is going to be unique to each individual listening, but it's going to have the same effect as just building trust and relationship with you and giving them the confidence to go ahead in their next step. So in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. I hope that you've been encouraged or challenged in your faith today, and that something we discussed prompts you to grow deeper in your walk with the Lord. If it has, make sure you tell a friend so they can grow along with you. And if you or a friend would like to be a guest and share about God's faithfulness in your life, please email me at podcast@tendingfields.net. Because when we tell of God's faithfulness, we never run out of stories.
Whatever is true, whatever is noble, things